Okay, great. I'm really excited about this episode of Cold Emails, Hot Takes. Today I have Eric Nowoslawski on the podcast. How are you doing, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and so you and I, we've been exchanging a lot of interesting ideas via Twitter DMs. So I thought, I had to have you on the podcast just for the viewers, for the listeners. So Eric is the leads growth at play.com. He's really one of those underrated Twitter accounts that don't have a lot of followers, but they really, really know what they're talking about. So maybe they're too busy sending cold emails than growing the Twitter audience. So that's probably why. But yeah, he really knows his game when it comes to scaling cold email, and especially when it comes to real-time signal-based data. And that's going to be a big topic of this episode also, like how to create that relevant and personalized data at scale. So
Yep.
yeah, Eric, just to, I'm really excited about this, but talking about something we talked about in our Twitter DMs, just to start us off, can you tell me more about the misspelling strategy?
The misspelling strategy. Oh yeah, this is great. So my kind of MO, like everything that I try to do is how can I write an email that somebody looks at and they're like, oh, this isn't an automated email. Like somebody actually sent me this email. And that's what I'm always trying to achieve. And so with the misspelling strategy, what we're using is kind of a pattern interruption to make somebody be like, oh wow, okay, like they actually sent me this email. And so what we'll do is we will purposely, and instantly actually makes this super easy to do. We will purposely misspell something inside of the copy. Never their first name. Always it never touch their first name, but misspell something inside of the copy, and we'll try to make it look like an autocorrect mistake. So the example I use a lot is how do you know your website is optimized for conversation? And then once we have an email open trigger, we'll use instantly to automatically send a new email like 8 minutes after the email open trigger goes. And it's all like your back end is already checking to see if they replied or anything by then. And we all know open rates are kind of trash anyway, which is for this strategy is still totally fine. And so then 8 minutes after they open the email, we'll send them an email that says asterisk conversion dot 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 enter. So sorry, I didn't fix that before I sent it out. And we got great results on that campaign, which was literally just it was for an influencer who all he does is takes people's offers and then just revamps them. And a lot of the ways he starts is just with their website. And so yeah, and like people would like message back, and they were definitely on their iPhones because we had the sent from the iPhones, get Outlook for iOS, like, and they would message right back after that email and be like, oh, I don't know how it's like optimized for conversation or whatever it was. That campaign, I think we ran that like a year and a half ago. So from what I remember, I think that was like, depending on what list we were sending to and how we sent it, that was like an 8 to 12% response rate campaign when we were doing that.
All right, yeah, that's really smart, man. I might have to test that one myself with our internal campaigns.
Yeah, I definitely would go for it. Because it like, and then like, because who automates that, right? Like nobody is just like automating that. And it, like I said, instantly is like one of the only tools that you can do that super simply, like on that right side inside of the email campaign builder.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. So also a big topic of today's podcast, like I said, is going to be relevant data. And you mentioned it. It's something you really know a lot about. What is relevant data? How do you obtain it for your cold outreach campaigns?
Yeah. So great question. So, and this is what I talk about with people all the time. So you look at like a regular database, right? We're talking about ZoomInfo, Seamless, Apollo, LeadIQ, Lead Graph, all of these different databases. They will give you firmographic information based off of how many employees the company has, the industry that they think that the company has is, or they just pulled it from their LinkedIn profile, which is great. They're going to give you the owner's first and last name, and then the email address and their LinkedIn profile. And then after that, like everything else is pretty extraneous. They all basically give you the same information, right? And so every buyer is used to like being reached out to on like an industry level basis, and they're used to being reached out to on an employee level basis. So sometimes people come to me and they'll be like, oh, I want to email every chief marketing officer of companies with 50 to 100 employees. That's my ideal customer profile. And I kind of talk to them about how like that is like your high level ideal customer profile, but that's not your golden ideal customer profile. And so obviously for people who are listening to this who might not know what that means, like there are 700 million people on LinkedIn, and there's like this gigantic circle of all of those people. And then your ideal customer profile is like a subset of those people. And then your golden ideal customer profile is what I talk about all the time. And so a great example is like one campaign that we're running right now. There's a CSV import tool that's it's a turnkey CSV import tool. And they reach out to product managers. And it's like, okay, great. So we could just reach out to product managers at companies with 10 to 10,000 employees and just have a heyday. Or we could first make sure that they even have CSV import on their website and reach out to them and see if it's something they'd want to take off their engineering team's time. So we use a tool called clay.com, which I work for that company. So full disclosure, I work for this company. We use a tool called clay.com, and we can score, we have a list of 28,000 SaaS companies. We could score every single SaaS company with one integration, pushing one button. We could score all of them to see who mentioned CSV import on their website, and then get that link. And then in the email campaign, even say, hey, I was on your website and on this page, it mentioned CSV import, and then we send it to them. And so far the responses, like people will even come back and they'll be like, was this email like programmatically done? Because this was genius. I don't need your product, but this was really cool. Right. And so when I'm talking about relevance, there's that is a perfect type of relevance where it's just like a firmographic relevance. Like this company just generally all the time, this is a perfect time to reach out to them, and you can send this relevant message to these companies. So you have the kind of like the account-based relevance, but then there's also trigger relevance. And so what I mean by trigger relevance is like, the easiest one that everybody goes after is like funding rounds. And like, I actually don't even do, like, we'll use funding rounds as like a filter, but we never mention them because like everybody else is mentioning them. Funding rounds is a good one. Chief executive, like some kind of CXO new hire is another great trigger. Did they just install, a certain software on their website in the last month? Like these are all trigger-based things that we'll monitor. And then once they enter that trigger, then we'll, hit them with the email. And then like through Clay, we'll set up all of these monitoring things and everything. And once somebody enters that window, start hitting them. Or it's just Sales Navigator, to be honest, too. So two kinds of relevance, like ideal, perfect, golden ideal customer profile that you're searching for on the marketplace, so you're not just spamming every chief marketing officer, and then the trigger based of like, okay, so this thing happened that makes them qualified. What is it? How can we find it? And then let's go, message towards those people.
Yeah, really interesting, man. So you mentioned right with this funding rounds, it's something that already people think about, and I feel a lot of people are thinking, but the way you thinking, it seems it's okay, like going that extra mile, thinking, okay, what's something similar, signal based, but that other people are doing it. Like for example, okay, someone recently got promoted to a CXO position, and then hitting them at the right time. The timing is really important as well when it comes to
100%. Yeah. Like I was just talking to a graphic designer, and she was like, how should I get jobs? I'm like, well, you should probably just go to every company that raised money who's hiring a graphic designer and just email them. Like it's like and just say like, hey, I noticed that you're hiring a graphic designer. You could get this data. Jordan Crawford, blueprintgtm.com. He is building this database himself. Apollo kind of has it inside as well. And then you could use Appify, API-Fi, I don't know what they call it, APIFY.com. They have an Indeed scraper. Go create like job board postings are phenomenal triggers.
Okay, great. Yeah, the Indeed scraper sounds interesting. Well, where can you find that type of data inside of Apollo?
So Apollo, the filter is like all the way to the left. It says job postings on the bottom. The only problem with that is like you have no clue when they posted the job. Like you just know that like they are hiring for this position. That's why I'll use Jordan Crawford's data at Blueprint GTM, or use the Indeed scraper to just see like, all right, who is on Indeed hiring for sales development managers right now.
Okay, great. In our Twitter DMs, we were chatting about a couple of things. One of them was you sent me an example of an interesting niche, which was off-market deals for private equity companies. It's a company that you were running, and the level of personalization and relevancy was insane. Do you remember which example I'm talking about? And can you share a little bit more about that campaign? It was super interesting.
So, and then we actually just switched to an e-commerce one that like, we still use that kind of personalization. I'm trying to see. I'm even trying to pull up that message here. I guess it doesn't necessarily matter.
Let me see if I can find it. Putting you a little bit on the spot with the specific example, but maybe
Okay. So
maybe
this is what
the
we're doing.
general
No. I
concept or
found it.
the
I found it.
general.
Yeah.
No.
So these private equity companies, they love local service companies. You're talking about like a margin of like 50 to 60%, not a whole lot of competition, install a little bit of technology into the company, run a couple Facebook ads, and you could like 3x the business very, very simply. So what we were doing is looking for like pest control companies, like it's like really, really niche. And these guys are on LinkedIn. They like got far enough that they know that they need to be on LinkedIn. And we were messaging to them. So like, hey, first name, saw you've been running company name for, whatever amount of years. So the way we were doing that was finding the owner of the company and scraping Sales Navigator for that, taking that list, bringing it into Clay, using their LinkedIn integration, and then enriching for the person's profile and then the company profile, so that we could have the founded year of the company just like straight in our spreadsheet, so that we could say like, so you've been at this company since, or you've been running this company since 2012, right? So we have a great first line that definitely is in the preview text when they open it up on their phone. Digging a little deeper, I saw you had whatever Google review count reviews on Google, averaging a Google review score. And then I saw your Yelp review score as well. Always such a tough crowd over there. The reason I reached out is because I'm curious if you'd be open to selling a business. Let me know if it's something you're considering. And so that all those things we did in Clay as well. They have a Google review integration that if you could find the person's business, which if you have their domain, you'll find their Google My Business account. And we'll take the total amount of reviews that they've had and then their average Google review and then put it into the campaign. Then take their company name, scrape Google to find their Yelp page, which then the Yelp scraper inside of Clay will also give us their review score. I was thinking about making like different lines for everybody, but it turned out like everybody gets a different everybody has a higher Google review than they have a Yelp review. So we just put in a line like, there's such a tough crowd over there. Like everybody hates Yelp. No. So reason I reached out is I'm curious you'd be open to selling your business. Let me know if it's just something you'd be considering. Super, super short message. Like literally the personalization and the relevance is like 60% of the message there. And then our ask is super straight and to the point. And and then we were just able to take these companies and then just like move them on to the private equity firms as leads of like, because there's a huge problem with these private equity companies right now is they have cash to deploy to buy these companies. Private equity has created more billionaires than real estate ever has. Everyone is like talking about like real estate has created more millionaires. Yeah, but like private equity has created billionaires. And so they have cash to deploy. They have no clue where to find these companies. And so we found a really good niche in doing that. And then we also found a private equity firm that wants to buy e-commerce stores. Basically the same thing, except the personalization we added was we added like the exact date that they started working on the company, like from their LinkedIn profile using Clay, because their integration will give you like, you started working at this company August 2018. We added that in. And then we created a line at the end of like, P.S. I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, you live in this area. Have you ever, been to this restaurant? We've heard really good things about it. And we literally ran those campaigns side by side of just like, hey, would you sell your company? And then the one with all of the personalization. And we had a 5x increase in responses when we used that personalization.
Man, great stuff. Great stuff. I love it. Especially people when they hear personalization, they just think about, an icebreaker, personalized first line or whatever it may be, but that's not really scalable, right? It's a little bit tedious, but if you're using all these custom variables and these additional data points, you just insert them as custom variables, you have them there. It's already highly personalized, but still scalable and like not really a lot of manual work involved. And yeah, man, that's great. People should really like think about that more, like using more custom variables if they have
100%. Because like I said in the beginning, like we're trying to get over the barrier of them saying, all right, this is an automated email, right? And so Vaibhav Nimbiri built SmartWriter, and that is probably the best AI tool I've ever seen for writing first lines, because like a lot of the first line tools, all they're doing is exactly what I did. It's just extracting a little tidbit about somebody's LinkedIn profile and then throwing that into the same line over and over and over again. And so like SmartWriter actually, I feel like uses way more AI and like actually will write different lines for people and things like that. But the problem is sometimes these lines, like they end up like a little wonky no matter what. Like the cheaper ones will say things like, oh, I saw you went to this college. Like, did you know John Elton went to that college too? Like, and it's like, yeah, I can't, like, how do you sell something after that? That's like really tough. So when we use Clay, we're just pulling out the inserts that we need, and it's still super, super relevant. Like I would be hard pressed to have anybody tell me that like that's a bad line. Like that, reaching out to them and saying like the date that they started working at the company, or actually the date you'll get is the day they started that title. So you always want to include the title with it, but like freaking great line. We'll get great open rates until we turn off open rates, because we'll just turn them off after we run it for like a week. But yeah, adding in more custom variables, we see huge increases, but they have to be relevant. Like you can't just be doing like just like the cheapest AI software you found on the market and then throwing those in. You got to keep it really, really relevant.
So besides the custom variables strategy and the relevancy, what's kind of your process to come up with compelling copy for your cold email campaigns, right? You mentioned kind of the structured, all of this, like how do you come up with that stuff?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes from the customer. Like the customer has to be the one to say like, all right, here's my perfect customer. And I have that conversation with them too. I'm like, look, like, don't think of me as like your cold email nerd. Like think of me as your data nerd. Like you tell me where your customers are and I will go find that. Like, so wherever you point me is like, we have to be very clear that like, that's what exactly we're going after. And then it was funny as when it comes to copy, like I was just watching cold email hot takes last night with Nick Abraham on the episode, and like right in the middle of the episode you asked that as well, and he was like, like I really don't spend that much time on the copy. Like as long as you're getting an email delivered and you have a relevant message to these people, like the copy kind of doesn't matter. And so obviously the copy matters, but like I don't think you need like the best, like to spend like 4 hours and like multiple drafts and everything. Like our copy basically writes itself because there's so much data, right? Like the first line is always going to be the same. Second line is usually something to do with the relevance of the company. So like, hey, I figured, so that line we use, like, hey, Nils, notice that you've been the founder of Instantly since, whatever. So I figured you would be the perfect person to reach out to. Next line, I noticed Instantly has a free trial on their website. So I figured, you might be a fit for this product, whatever, and then just get straight into the ask. Thanks for your time. Boom, like under 75 words, boom, 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 boom. Don't spend a whole lot of time on the copywriting. That's, kind of our fault. And like I said, the data basically writes the email itself. It's not that crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Can't overthink it with the cold email copy either, right? It's just have the relevancy. You have the reward or like the value prop, and then you have the request, which is the call to action. And that's pretty much it. If you can like sprinkle in some custom variables to make it even more relevant, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
How about follow-ups? So you sent that first email. What kind of follow-ups do you like to have on step 2 or step 3, or do you even do a lot of follow-ups?
Yeah, so this is even my favorite. So we won't go over like 4 follow-ups, like unless we have a client who, and we try to talk to them about this, like having like a super, super long time horizon and like a really nice brand building email sequence. But most people are like direct response, like I just need meetings today, like let's just go. I've set up campaigns that are like 12 emails long, and it's like over the course of like 6 months that we're sending it. But that's like, a brand building thing as opposed to a direct response thing. So for follow-ups, I think the biggest mistake people make in their follow-ups is that I think the thoughts or like bumping this up, just making sure you saw my email, like I think those are basically done. Like unless you're outside of a market that the people get emails all the time in, like we were talking about that gutter cleaning niche just before, I don't find that's working with people anymore. I think it's kind of like a lazy thing. What I like to do is try to create serendipity in the follow-ups and make it seem like I'm telling like an overarching story through all of the threads. So like Then the next follow-up that we send is a lot of times, there's this thing on LinkedIn called people also viewed. And so if you go to somebody's page, it says people also viewed, and then it'll put in, your thing. And so if I were to say like, hey, we have a mutual connection, you're probably not going to know that person. But the people also viewed, LinkedIn is using some kind of algorithm to find like, who do you DM the most? Who do you comment on their posts? Who do you like their posts most often? And then that person will show up. So we'll actually scrape that person and we'll say, Nils, I was just on Rayo's profile on LinkedIn and the algorithm pushed me back to yours. So I figured I would follow up. And then we have some kind of follow-up thing there. So that there's at least serendipity with like, wow, they were actually doing research and like, that's your co-founder. Like, and so that person. I was just on their profile and I'd figure I'd follow up. And then we add in like, maybe a case study or something there. And then the third email, I'll say something like, to add more context or digging deeper here, like maybe I didn't explain myself correctly. And then we like go into the case study a little bit more. Fourth email, we just shift the total angle of the offer. Like, oh, hey, like if this isn't a problem for you, like maybe this is a problem, just because like if they're not going to respond at that angle, they're probably just not going to respond. Then I hate breakup emails. Like the email where like, hey, you haven't responded to me, so I'm going to stop emailing you now. Like it just makes no sense to me. But we'll pull in the total company headcount from their LinkedIn company page, and we'll pull that into the sequence. And then we'll say, hey, Nils, there's 8 people at Instantly. I can understand things get, or like to my understanding, there's 8 people at Instantly. I know things get incredibly busy. Is there possibly somebody else in the company I should be speaking with? And we'll kind of just like end all of our sequence with that.
Okay, great. Awesome. And Eric, you gave me so many ideas to test, like for
go for it. Yeah.
internal campaigns and all that. So thanks for sharing all this value. I know you have a hard stop, so maybe as a final question to wrap it up here. I'm always curious to see where do you think cold email is going to be in the next 6, 8, 12 months? If you had to make a prediction about what will work in the future that maybe is not on people's radar yet, like what would you say?
Yeah. So the big thing I think about all the time is the spam filters. Like they are getting better and better and better at like, or they're getting harder to beat. 1, 2, like these email service providers are catching on to what we're doing, right? Like I have to think they see IWE in all of these subject lines and they're like, all right, like this is a warm up service. Like I have to have a feeling that they know it's going on the back end. Right. And so like the biggest thing that I'm worried about in the next 6, 8, 12 months is like, how is the technology landscape going to shift and how are we going to be able to react to that? If it's spam filters, then that's fine. Like we all know what to do, like just more domains, more inboxes. Instead of sending 35 to 50 emails a day, let's all send 20. Like we all know how to get around that. My biggest worry is like Google, Outlook, or Zoho being like, hey, this subject line always has IWE in it. It's done. Like we're not going to send this anymore, or like we're not going to allow it anymore. That's probably my biggest fear right now is just like, how is spam going to change in the next 6 to 8 months? I think like there's things like more things change, more things stay the same, right? So like, the more things that change about cold email, like the more that you have to have your offer perfect, the more you have to have relevant messaging, the more you have to have a good list. Like all of those things are always going to be around. It's just the technology landscape that scares me.
Okay, got it. Yeah, well, especially with the warm up and warm up pool, have to keep innovating there, like always staying ahead of the curve, like making adjustments, like even small little tweaks on how the warm up emails are structured. Always have to be on top of these things, and we also continue with Instantly. We're like continuously making changes in the warm up. But yeah, it's like a cat and mouse game sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We should all get shirts made that say like Google hates us, because I think like all of us, we just feel like we're just at war with Google all day.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's essentially with any traffic source, right? You always have to be ahead of the curve and know what's working right now. You can't really rely on, I mean, some, like you said, some stuff stays the same, but some strategies that worked 6 months ago stop working. So you have to, be quick on your feet. But yeah, Eric, this was a great episode, man. So much actionable advice, so many ideas to go out and test, also for people, for viewers. And it was great to have you on. Thanks for being on. Thanks for the time. And where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, about what you do? And I'll put it in the description of the video also.
Yeah, so you could just email me at eric.nowoslawski, NOWOSLAWSKI @clay.run. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. Just again, Eric Nowoslawski, and there's no other Eric Nowoslawski, so you'll find me there.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll put it in the description too. Also, your Twitter, like go follow him on Twitter, one of the most
Yep.
underrated Twitter accounts in the cold email space. And yeah, thanks again. And I'll talk to you soon, man.
Yep. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye bye.